Hello everybody! Today, Foundations Entertainment University is in Danbury, Connecticut at the future home of Xtreme Play. With us today is Dr. Jim Bonheur. Jim, thank you for joining us.
Hey Jerry, thanks a lot for having me.
Jim is the owner and developer of the Xtreme Play facility, and as you can see, we are absolutely under construction today, hoping to open this facility by the 1st of February 2021. Jim, we appreciate you taking time with us today.
Happy to have you guys.
And talking with us a little bit about Xtreme Play. Help us understand, you're a medical professional, you're a surgeon. Help us understand your overall vision. What was it about entertainment that was drawing you?
I've always had a passion for games and excitement, and I think if you ask people who know me, I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie. That's why I excel in my field. I do a lot of trauma and stuff, so I kind of live on that energy. And so, many years ago, when the American Ninja Warrior came out, I decided to build my son a Ninja Warrior course in the backyard.
Oh, wow.
And that was kind of a big hit. And so I said, you know what, let me see if I can take this out and maybe open up a center for just Ninja Warrior. And then the snowball started going downhill, and here we are.
Now, you and I, we've worked together for probably about 4 years now.
Correct.
And I know in the very beginning you talked to me a little bit about how the health side of the medical profession could bridge very comfortably with active entertainment.
Correct.
And what we have here ultimately is an adrenaline park, is it not?
Correct.
I mean, there's a lot of really exciting elements. Tell us a little bit about what you've incorporated here.
So in my life as a surgeon, I do a lot of a variety of cases. So in my life here in Xtreme Play, we offer a diverse portfolio of attractions. Everything from a elevated ropes course to a virtual reality to the dark ride theater to standard old run video games, obviously the new type, but the arcade games, which I was used to growing up, to mini bowling. We have a rock wall, we have velocity for toddlers, and so it's just endless. It's endless entertainment.
Well, it's an incredible amount of entertainment in 30,000 square feet.
Yeah.
What I think is most novel about Xtreme Play is the formatting of the actual building.
Yeah.
So this is a building that you bought in the last couple of years, and tell us what you were thinking about, and tell us about this building.
When I saw the building, it had such a unique feel to it. It was an old New York sports club, so it really was designed to handle large volumes of individuals who were working out. It was just unique. It had racquetball courts, it had an open mezzanine looking down to the lower level. I had a suspicion that this would be a great venue. That's when you came to kind of verify that and make sure that I really wasn't off the rails.
Well, what's amazing here is that this is probably the most dynamic facility we have ever created an entertainment center in because of the configuration of the building itself.
Right.
When New York Sports Club was in operation, obviously it was very important to them to be operating on multiple levels. The greatest thing about this building is how the levels interconnect with one another. Walking through the building, you can literally see all of the entertainment elements no matter what level you're on.
Correct. Correct.
Very, very special.
Correct. 30,000 square feet when you're in a warehouse is just huge open space. But here, it's almost like living in a really large home, but yet making it feel so comfortable and cozy that it's not as big on the inside, because you really don't feel overtaken by the facility. There's always something that catches your eye.
Well, there's some really incredible visuals, and frankly, we're in the middle of construction right now, but even during construction, you can see the uniqueness of the elements that are ultimately going to be in place. So, Jim, tell us a little bit about, Xtreme Play. Obviously, it's a pretty intense name, and I think you're ultimately following through with that with everything that you've selected in here and making this a very special adrenaline-based park. Was physical activity an important part of what you wanted to deliver to the community?
It definitely is. It definitely is, because part of some of the surgeries that I do, I'm a weight loss surgeon by trade. What I see is a lot of people come through, adults with their children in tow, who are just obese, or they're out of shape, or they're just, even my kids have kind of been glued to their portable devices.
Sure.
And so a lot of things bother me personally with that. One is obviously that they're not getting any physical exercise. But two is the social part of it, that people are starting to interact very independently or isolated behind a monitor. And so for me, it was important to create an environment where I can go and play with my children, or my father or their grandfather can go and interact with their grandkids together, not just sit there and watch them do a ride. And that's why when we created Xtreme Play, I wanted to have rides like the spin zone, virtual reality, things like that, where my children's grandfathers and grandmothers can actually play with them, or people with disabilities can actually interact.
So that's the greatest thing here, because really you're covering all the generations in this facility.
Correct.
The other thing that's become very apparent is there's also areas of the venue where you can simply relax.
Correct.
And enjoy a cup of coffee or a sandwich or things along those lines.
Correct.
Was that part of your vision as well, where people could just kick back and enjoy themselves here?
100%, 100%. This is supposed to be an adrenaline park, but it's supposed to be stress-free. So you don't have to feel pressured to perform. So if your kids want to go out and enjoy themselves, that's great. If you want to sit back and watch the sports or something on in the cafe, you can do that. So it really covers all groups.
Let's talk a little bit about the mechanics of how you got here. You started with a vision and you said to yourself, hey, I want to create an entertainment facility. I know that you've visited various trade shows within the industry. You've come to Foundations Entertainment University yourself.
Correct.
Ultimately, let's talk a little bit about the process of identifying markets that were suitable, how we secured financing, and ultimately the real estate search. Let's start with the investigation process initially.
So, look, I was new to this from the get-go, and I think that it is key that you find a consultant or a team that really knows the market, knows what to do or look for in the market, because without that, I would have been flying blindly, I'm from a town which is about 30 minutes away from here, and I tried to look in that town because it would have been easier for me to do it.
Sure.
In that town, rents were very high. The locations were not as, there really wasn't much on the market for me to look for. And the few buildings that I did find, the landlords are so difficult that it just wasn't worth doing the project. So through the consulting, through working with you, and insight through other consultants, it just became more apparent that I should, if I can do it, find a building and use that building to then grow the project.
And what was the process you went through in trying to identify this structure in particular?
So we did a feasibility study in the other town, and again, that probably wasted about a year. Well, it wasn't really a waste, but we spent about a year and a half in looking for properties.
And I recall that was a very difficult real estate search because we had very little inventory available, and the landlords that we were talking to were simply looking for rents that were astronomical.
Correct, and they weren't willing to give us any dollars for fit up. Then what we did was, I went back to you and I said, I had a choice. The choice was to continue with the project, and at the time I actually had a partner with me. And the choice was to continue with the project and look elsewhere, or to just break the project apart and let it go. So my partner came in and said, you know what, I don't think I'm gonna be able to do this. I think we should just let this thing go. And so that night I thought about it, and the next morning I said, forget it. I'm gonna make it happen. And so I called you and I said, you know what? I'm now doing this on my own. We gotta find a different site for this. And so we looked at the major areas within the county, and we got another feasibility study. And this town in particular, Danbury, really fit the bill. And once I knew that this one fit the bill, we started looking for building opportunities. And through I got a real estate broker who was helping me in Stamford, and I just happened to stumble on this building. And when I came in, I just said, this is it. You can feel it. This was it. Because shortly after that, I called you.
Exactly right. And what's really interesting is that Danbury proved to be a really dynamic marketplace from a cultural perspective, from a demographic perspective.
Correct.
We have high quality consumers here, and frankly, not a lot of competition.
Correct. So I started negotiating the purchase of the building, and I knew it was the right fit because the puzzle pieces started to fit. And before we knew it, we had it.
And that was a turning point for you as well, because acquiring the building also set the stage for the type of financing that was ultimately going to be required for this project.
Correct.
Maybe give us a top level perspective on what that financing looked like. Obviously, we went to the Small Business Administration.
Right. Well, once I bought the building, I knew I was screwed because I can't do anything else with the building, so it has to go in one direction. Because this isn't an office building. You can't, otherwise I'm going to spend a lot of money in outfitting a gym for an office building. So I knew at the time that there was no turning back. We went through Berkshire Bank, and we went through an SBA, and that was a process in itself. The SBA was good enough I was able to secure an SBA loan, which covered the build out and construction of the facility. And then the loan I got through the bank. The loan was covered through the bank.
So that was actually an excellent structure, because that allowed us to extend the amortization of the loan overall, because the real estate was in fact owned.
Correct, correct. And I got to tell you, it was the best decision that I made to buy the building, especially now going through COVID.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What do you see as the big advantage in owning the real estate?
Well, I mean, right now, I have to pay rent to myself. So that's the key. I can do whatever I want to this building and not feel that I have a landlord on top of me.
So that's a critically important part, right? Because
Correct.
owning the real estate has allowed you, number one, to extend the amortization from a loan perspective.
Right.
So the payments are more manageable, and you're building equity.
I'm building equity in the building.
real estate as you go.
100%. And so it really takes a major stressor off my back about insofar as what I can do with the building, as far as the finances with the building. You know, we're a little bit over budget now, and I'm looking to refinance the loan, as well as maybe take a second out to add a couple more little things, details that I want to put here.
Sure.
I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't have the building, if I didn't own the building.
Well, that's right. So let's talk a little bit about the design. You and I walked through the structure in the very beginning.
Yeah.
And of course it was empty, plain Jane, former New York sports club.
Yeah.
How active were you in the design aspect?
I'm a bit of a control freak because of what I do naturally. But this is not, I'm out of my realm in here. I recruited Dynamic Design, Doug Wilkerson and his team, phenomenal. You know, through their guidance and their instruction, they really kind of walked me through the process of designing it, and they sent me mood boards, which all that stuff was new to me, which now I have a good grasp on. But I'll tell you, the way they designed it and walked me through it to what it's actually coming out to be in real life, it's amazing. It truly is amazing. It couldn't have been done without them, because I'll tell you, they do stuff that I can't even, like the tile work that they put there, the lights that they put, I couldn't even match them. I mean, it's just, I've learned, leave it to the experts to do.
That's a great experience to have, and I'm so glad that you were able to be part of that, because you were able to put your signature
Correct.
on this business overall.
Correct.
But as with any construction project, it's not without pitfalls. Right?
Correct.
You bought an existing building. The building is several decades old.
Yeah.
What were some of the things you encountered that we weren't counting on until we opened the walls, so to speak?
Well, apparently this building had a pool in it.
Is that right?
Yeah, it had a pool in it.
When was the last building you purchased that actually had a pool in it that you discovered after the fact?
You know, yeah, I mean, and we found that out because part of the deal was to clean the floor, you know, lift all the wood off the floor and bring us down to slab. And when we started going down to slab, you started to see 3 feet deep in tile. And they obviously filled it. And so we created a lot of divots on the lower level because there was a pool there.
Sure.
And the guys through the demo team who was coming down to clean up, they weren't aware of that.
So item 1, you find a pool in the building that you just purchased.
Correct.
Okay.
Item 2 is that when I bought the building, we had 2 racquetball courts here. Apparently there was 12 to 14 of them scattered around the entire building. And so that became a bit of a challenge too. But we were able to overcome that, you know, but we had more racquetball courts than we had anticipated. Leaks in the roof, I mean, trying to think, there's so many different things.
Well, you know, as with any real estate related project, the minute you get into the heavy construction, then you start to notice what's working and what's not working.
Correct.
So between some of the mechanical systems, and of course, you know, we had a gas line scenario that we had to remedy.
Right.
As
So
well.
the gas line, we have, I think, 14 HVAC units up on the roof, and the piping to those, there's a leak someplace in between them. So we had to replace all the piping, not the units, but all the piping. And then once you connect the piping to the connector to the propane tank, which is across the parking lot, there's a leak between the tank and the building, so we'd have to rip up the parking lot. Then we had a water leak in the back from an old sewage. When we wanted to put the elevator in, they didn't know that there was a sewage line running right through the base of that, so we had to divert that. So it's one thing after another. It's funny because when we started the project, I didn't have any room for contingency dollars. And I naively told JLL, our project manager, we're not going to use the contingency dollars. We're going to work with what we got. And they gave me this look like, you're crazy. And so once we started to move through the project, these things started to, to present themselves. It's come now to a point where another hurdle is just get it done, fix it and get it done.
Well, I think you become very seasoned in the process,
Correct.
right? How much time have you been on the site actively viewing the construction and being actively involved in the process?
Oh, I'm here all the time. I operated this morning and I came up here to see you guys. Tomorrow I have a full day of patients. I'm operating Thursday, Friday. I'll come in here in the afternoon or I'll come here on the weekends.
One thing I wanted to touch on was, with respect to some of the scenarios that you've experienced with the building itself, having to rectify certain items that were unknown at the time, you found some of your own solutions along the way.
Correct.
And you've been very active in the process of delivering the solutions.
Correct.
Rather than relying on the contractor to do that.
Correct.
Give everybody a feel for why that's so important and why that was so important in this case.
Well, I think that comes from what I do as a surgeon, because, as a surgeon, our motto is trust no one. You have to do it yourself and you got to make sure it's done right. That doesn't mean that I don't trust what you do. You just got to make sure that you verify it. And so when I saw things coming through the system, like there was a wall that had water damage to it, and I got a bid for $60,000 to fix it. And I just couldn't understand why to fix the wall it was $60,000. And so, and I wasn't getting any solutions as to what my options were.
Right.
And so I said, screw it, you know what? I'm gonna make my own options. And I ended up fixing it for $12,000. If you are not involved or you're not paying attention, it doesn't mean that what they're doing is wrong. It just means that there are alternatives that you can save yourself dollars. And so it's really important that you stay in tune and that you pay attention. There are certain there's certain types of doors that they can use. Some of them are, you can get the $8,000 door, which is maybe what the architect put on the sketch or on the plans, but you can get a $300 door, which serves the purpose.
So this is a really important part of the process here, is managing the budget.
Correct.
Because once you hit the go button, you're going.
Correct.
And you've got to manage that budget. This is not a hands-off time. This is a time where, aptly, the surgeon has to jump in and sit here and say, we're going to control the budget aspects of things, and we're going to find solutions.
Correct. And I will say that I do have a management team, JLL. I couldn't do it without them because they're actually on site all the time, and they buffer everything, But even with those guys, they're doing the best they can for me, but like I said, I trust nobody. I've got to make sure, and I've gone back to them and said, you know what, I can do it for cheaper. For example, we're going to put a soffit right here. And they're quoting, I think, around $3,000–4,000 to do it. I have a guy who's going to do it for about $800. And so I just take it off.
So, and this is a really important way of managing budgets.
Correct.
Right? Finding alternatives and solutions.
Correct.
So let's fast forward a little bit to the actual operation. We're getting very close to operating day. February 1 is our target.
Correct.
Tell us about, are we bringing in a management team to the site to control the daily operations? Will you serve as the executive owner overseeing the process?
In order to run this facility appropriately, I can't run it myself. So I will have a management team, which includes a general manager, an assistant manager, and a structure that's set to run this business. I still will come here every day or every other day to see how things are working. They're working on essentially on protocols to make the business run. We're not getting, I think the key, like what you and I have talked about in the past, is to get somebody with experience.
Well, that's right. Someone that can hit the ground running and really deliver on the objectives and the initiatives that have been laid out for the business itself.
Correct.
Now, this is a fully automated business.
Correct.
We have automated POS. We'll have online reservation systems. You'll have the ability to evaluate the business from your living room, quite frankly, on a real-time basis.
Correct. And we have cameras in here for security, but we can also, it's important for me to be able to see remotely what's going on in the facility. Sure. So I don't necessarily have to be on day to day, but if my general manager says, hey, we have a problem in the cafe, this is broken, I can pop in remotely and see how he wants to address it, and whether I agree with it or not, we can find a solution.
So I think today it's super important. You've been very active in the process up to this point, and obviously you're going to be very active in the operating side of the business without having to physically be on the premises every
Correct.
moment of the day.
Correct.
And I think that's a critical aspect, and I think that's why we made that focus to put so much technology into the business.
Correct. Let me put it to you this way. This to me is like having a baby, okay? If you have a baby, don't commit to having a baby if you can't take care of the child. Now this baby, XP or Xtreme Play, whichever you want to call it, the first year, it's like having a baby. I won't let go of XP until he's about 5 years old, walking and talking and kind of feeding himself. It's the same thing I do with this. It's the same thing I do with any of my businesses. The first 2 years are critical. If you don't feed the baby, it's gonna be problems. So this is the same thing.
Super, super important aspect. You've got to keep your hand on the pulse.
You have to. If you're not, then you know what? If you don't feed your child, they're gonna get malnourished.
That's right.
And this is your child, and you look at it year as year. You know, in 3-4 years, this will be an established entity. It should be running on its own. So it's the same thing as a child. You send them to school. Now you can focus on other things.
It's a really good point. So let's turn to the future for a second. You're one of these guys that always looks for the next challenge.
Yes.
What do you see the future for yourself in entertainment and additional venues throughout the marketplace?
It's funny because I was telling my wife the other day, I was in the car thinking to myself, you know, when XP is finished, what am I going to do with myself? And she gave me that, you know, that look that your wife gives you, that just stop talking.
She must be thrilled.
No, she knows me. It's just, listen, the one thing I can tell you about this is I work hard, I play hard, I'm at home for dinner all the time, every night with my kids. But I don't know, you know what, I like to live, I like excitement, I like to build. And so what's after this? I have some ideas, I don't know, I mean, maybe I'll build another one. I don't know, we'll see.
Well, just like with your medical practices in various markets throughout Connecticut, in the time that I've worked with you, I've never known you to do just one.
Correct. That's my problem.
So, you know, ultimately we could be looking at XP as a brand.
Correct.
In the Connecticut marketplace.
Correct.
In the future. It certainly has a first-class portfolio of entertainment within it.
Correct.
And it's clearly going to make a statement.
You know what, well, the reason I would do another one is because this industry, to me, is just such a positive industry. You know, everybody I've interacted with, from our initial interaction to the people that I've met at Foundation, at IAPA, I mean, it is such a welcoming community.
It is.
It's different than the finance world. Well, I'm not in the finance world, but you know, I know the people in there. It's different than the medical world. This is just an industry where people are just happy to do good things, you know, and
they're willing to help each other.
Yeah. It's not a cutthroat environment, and really, if you are serious about what you want to do, and you really are willing to put the time and energy for it, there are people that will help you. They'll help you achieve your dreams.
And I've noticed over the 25 years that I've been in the industry, this is an industry of people that are willing to help each other
100%.
succeed.
I mean, and it goes from even the people at the top to, you know, people who are just coming into the industry. You know, you don't have these egos, or maybe they do have egos, but I haven't encountered them. And I don't go around telling people I'm a doctor. I just go around in jeans and a t-shirt, just because I'm humbled by the fact that it's a new industry to me. But it's amazing the type of people that you will meet through Foundation, and you know, you have people from all walks of life, and everybody wants to experience that happiness. And the one thing that I think we all have in common is that we all want to share that happiness with somebody else. And I think that gives us that opportunity.
It does. Let me just say that in the years that we have worked together, the thing that has impressed me most about you, number one, is how creative a person you actually are in having vision, not only from the perspective of creating something that's fun and exciting, but even from an artistic perspective of adding elements into a venue. That's a side of you that's really surprised me. The other issue is
drinking. I do a lot of drinking. You know.
The other issue is your persistence and your problem-solving skills. Those, I think, have been immense along the way. You know, I think we would agree there were a few spots in our past where you almost could have naturally said, you know what, this is getting too difficult, I'm just going to stop.
What I've learned in this project is that just never give up. You know, before the project started, just as we were getting into COVID, and I hadn't secured the financing yet, but it was all there and it was just ready to go. We were still working on a few details. The bank, I'll never forget, the bank calls me up and says, we're not doing this deal anymore. And I had already bought the building.
Yes.
I had already invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into it. And I remember looking at my wife and saying, you know what, it's just, the bank said, no, we're not going to do it. And I was down. I was down that it wasn't the money issue, because at the end of the day, you know, money's money. We'll come back and we just got to work hard and make more money.
Sure.
But at the end of it's not like your health is in danger, but at the end of the day, I was depressed. And I told my son and my daughter, you know what, I don't think XP is gonna happen because of the bank. And they were down. And the next morning I woke up and I was like, you know what? It's gonna happen. And you know, you just re-energize yourself. And I will tell you that it may not look like there's a path, but you gotta find the path. And I promise you, you will find it. Just don't give up. And you will be surprised that when you go down that path, all the doors that start opening for you. But listen, I will tell you one thing about me. When I was in college, they told me you'll never go to medical school. And you know what? I did. When I was in medical school, they said, you'll never be a surgeon, be a psychiatrist. I went to become a surgeon. When I came out of my residency training, I was looking for a job. I said, you know what? I'm going to start my own practice. They told me, you're going to fail in 6 months. I've been in practice for 13 years, probably one of the busiest practices in town. When I started this thing, they said, you're crazy. Even my partner said, you know what, give it up. Look at where we are. And up until just before COVID, the bank said to me, you know what, we're not going to fund you. And look at where we are. So you know what, to me, when somebody says no, it's just another hurdle to get around to find somebody who will say yes. So if you want your dream, if this is what your dream is, then never quit. Just keep fighting. And you know what, it took me 4 years to do this. And for me, as a surgeon, I want done things, we expect things to be done yesterday. So for me to wait 4 years, it just goes to show you persistence pays off.
Your level of resolve is unmatched.
Yes.
Jim, I thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time.
Thank you very much. I can't thank you enough for all the help and support you've given me.
Well, you've given everyone invaluable insight today into what it takes to make it happen in the thick of it right now in construction.
That's it. A lot of prayer and faith. You'll do it.
Thanks, everybody.